So ease our way.
All right, so we are recording.
Got it.
So how was your week?
Been really busy. We've been trying to lay a patio, and so I've been shifting hardcore. So we did 16 barrelfuls of hardcore on Saturday, which finished me off for Sunday. But actually, it surprises me how strong I feel these days and how the energy comes through in a way that it never used to. And also the recovery period is much shorter. So Sunday, actually expected to feel absolutely wiped out, but was feeling really well as a
Oh, good.
consequence. And so we're making progress. How about you? How was your week?
I'm very very busy, and I'm still recovering from the eye surgery. So I've had a few little issues, nothing serious, but anyway. So for instance, this morning the lights in here are quite bright, and it's bothering my eyes a little bit. So I thought, what can I do besides my eye drops? So I just took a painkiller like a Tylenol and see if that takes the edge off. Anyways, I'm going to talk to someone at the eye center and see if this is normal at this stage or if I'm just being a big baby.
Well, big baby's probably in my comfort zone, so I can really relate to what you're saying about that because it was big surgery, wasn't it? Getting that done.
Well, I suppose it is. I mean, given that it's your eyeballs, but it feels like nothing. You're in and out in 10 minutes, so it doesn't feel like a big deal, but I suppose it is. Yeah, but I know I feel fine. This is the first time I'm only taking the Tylenol because I don't want to sit here during our chat blinking like this.
Or even stranger, which would be really good if you put a pair of these on dark glasses and they think, like doing a
Yeah,
chat with it
exactly.
wearing a pair of shades or something like that would look quite
Trying to look like a movie
interesting.
star or
Yes.
something.
Well, you do anyway, so you look fantastic. But
Oh, that's very sweet. No, it doesn't feel like that to me.
it's cool. So I guess,
Yeah.
in terms of doing this recording and what we wanted to do, we could perhaps talk a little bit about who we are as individuals. Just use that as a sort of entry point.
Yeah.
He's been asleep all morning and has not bothered me at all. And now the second we get on a Zoom call, that's it. He's pacing up and down and looking for his squeaky ball to make as much
That's
noise as
that's
possible.
quite okay because I think that just sort of makes us human. So I mean, if you need to while we're recording, just let's just be who we are. And if you need to let the dog out, that's fine. We can clip that sort of stuff out. So
I
it's,
think, I think
we'll
that
just
will
be
work.
flowing. We'll just be ourselves. We'll just be ourselves.
So,
So, did you want to start or did you want me to start or how do you want to proceed?
well, what about if I said something like, so tell me a little bit about who you are and why you're here?
Sounds good. So, why don't you do that?
We've got to stop this and get sensible, shall we? Because we're never going to get anywhere around this. But right. I forgot what I was going to say, and it sounded like a
Okay,
really good thing.
so why
So,
don't we start with just, hi, Kate. Nice to see you again.
okay, hi, Cheryl. It's really good to be here. Always amazes me that you're on the other side of the world, and yet we can have these fantastic conversations together. So tell me a
Mhm.
little bit about who you are and why you're here and what you do.
Well, yeah, okay, I can do that. So I'm in the food addiction realm. I help men and women who typically come to me because they are overweight. And through the process of working with them, we discover that they have an underlying issue. So they've been trying to lose weight, the yo-yo pattern that most of us are familiar with. And of course, through our chats and through working together, we discover that they have indeed a either a sensitivity to sugar and carbohydrates or a downright addiction to certain foods, sugar, carbohydrates, and highly processed foods. And I came into this line of work because I myself am a food addict. There's a history there that we can chat about sometime. But through my own issues and challenges, and working them out with a coach, I decided that what I had experienced myself, I wanted to offer to other people. And so I became trained and certified in food addiction. And you as well, have access to a tool called Sugar, which is which stands for Sugar Use Assessment Recording, and it's a diagnostic tool that's used with a structured interview. And what it does, it examines a person's um, dependence on these particular foods. So we're able to not just kind of guess at a person's uh, possible addiction, but we can actually diagnose it. And then the clients are, once they know what they're dealing with, it's a lot easier to move forward with their desire to lose weight, with their desire to have peace around food finally. So yeah, so that's what I do. I live in Canada. I'm married. I'm married 40 years coming up. I live in a beautiful rural setting just outside of our nation's capital, Ottawa, and and life is wonderful. I don't know what else to tell you.
Well, I
So
think
tell me about you. Tell me about you, Kate.
well, I'm on the other side of the ocean, and you and I met doing the Holistic Medicine for Addiction certification with Bitten Jonsson, who's our mentor. And we also both did the certification and the licensure for the sugar assessments. And that's where we first connected and met. And then went on to look at relapse prevention training as well together, which was a really interesting experience. So like you, I'm certified and qualified in holistic medicine for addiction and to run the sugar assessments, just as you are, with that fantastic description of what a difference it makes to be able to give people a diagnostic assessment to determine what is their correct treatment and to build a treatment profile based on those results. And this is absolutely key, because I think so much of the work that you and I do together when we work with clients, this is perhaps the only disease that we need to be told every single day that we have it, and to work on that in recovery, and having an understanding or a deep appreciation actually that we do have a diagnostic assessment of an addiction to sugar and carbs, processed food, ultra processed food, whatever we want to call it, helps to give us the why that gives us the motivation to make a difference in our lives. And like you, I bring a lived experience to the addiction piece. I know what we've really enjoyed in our conversations together is the fact that we have that shared experience of yo-yo dieting. And for me, you have 40 years of marriage. I have a 40-year history of that on again, off again with weight and big, big amounts of weight that have been difficult to live with for me. So it would be 7 stone here, going on another, oh, this is the life for me diet, and losing that 7 stone, and then almost getting to the goal weight, and like a tightly coiled spring, straight back on again. But there's a lot we can talk about around that, but I really identify when you talk about our shared lived experience, because I think that makes what we offer as coaches so powerful, because we've been there, we've done it, and both of us have found a way to navigate through that and to make peace with life, and more importantly, to make peace with food.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I find it so wonderful to watch people's transformations as they go through the program, because it's one thing to have a weight problem. it's quite another to have an addiction to food. And when a person gets the diagnosis, I find that a couple of things happen depending on the person. Some people just, they don't want to face the music, and you never hear from them again, or you hear from them many months later. Or you have people that are like, okay, yeah, that's me. Okay, now that I know what I'm dealing with, let's just do this. And they are full on, and the program starts. So it's quite interesting. But I think the majority of people appreciate knowing that there's something happening in their brain, that they are not flawed, they are not less than, they are not losers. You know, they have something that they can hang on to.
You know, and it's so powerful, almost. It's such a privilege to witness that and to almost watch the penny drop. One of the things that the diagnostic assessment tool produces is a symptom curve. So it's a very visual representation of how much of a person's life has been dominated by sugar. And it's, you know, for me, it was a total penny drop moment, a total aha moment of how much effort in my life had been given to sugar and to food, and how it had absolutely dominated my life through all these sort of life experiences of having children, having a significant career, you know, all the interests and passions that I had. Sugar and food just ran roughshod over everything, and it was the one thing that I could never get to grips with or understand, because I didn't know that the issue I was struggling with was an addiction.
Right. Right. Yes, it's in every waking moment. There's this droning energy that's just always there. You wake up thinking about it. You have a meal, you're thinking about the next meal. You have that meal, you're thinking about the next one, or you're thinking of the next celebration and what you're going to eat at this celebration. It has nothing to do with getting together with people, or it's about the food. Everything's about the food. But you were talking about the curve, the sugar curve. I think I may be able to pull that up as a quick example of one of my clients, if you want me to show that to you quickly. See if I can share screen, because I'm not the most technologically adept person. Let's see. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So this is an example of, you know, what we provide our clients. And on this side, you're looking at the various symptoms. And on the bottom here is the person's age, and over on the right is that person's weight. And from here, we can see the number of symptoms the person is experiencing. And I mean, just to quickly give a demonstration, the person identified their first symptoms at the age of 4. And that tells you a lot. I mean, addiction starts early on in life. And anyway, so as we progress, you know, here we're seeing the client at the age of 16, and you can see a lot more symptoms are beginning to pop up, and so on along her journey to date. And so these symptoms correlate with the weight, as you can see. So, and there's that familiar pattern that many of us experience. And so it's after we do the sugar interview and the diagnostic, we can demonstrate here, this is your life right now. This is what's been going on in your life, and this is what it looks like. And people are just blown away.
It's true, and that's my experience. And this is such a typical symptom curve, and this ability to map. I mean, how often do you get to sit down and actually map your life against the symptoms of a possible addiction and see it in glorious technicolor, as you can here, and really understand what the issue is? So, like you say here, symptoms debuted at 5 years old, but look what happens in adolescence. And this is not an uncommon picture. As people move into puberty and adolescence, you get a whole cascade of symptoms tied into that, and often you can also map it to particular life events, maybe a change of schools, maybe being bullied at school, maybe a falling out, where people start to turn to using sweets to actually handle what can be difficult emotional situations, but it starts to become hardwired into the brain and become more habitual, and then start to hijack the dopamine reward system. And then we're starting to get into various very serious problems. And also with an exposure to sweets at such an early age, particularly in adolescence, when parts of the brain that's looking into the prefrontal cortex, the area where rational decision making and executive thinking can take place, and we can learn how to control our impulses in our behavior, is not yet fully formed, and will not be fully formed until you're sort of 25 plus. Then you can start to tie in and see why having a cascade of symptoms that start to really hardwire that process of addiction into the brain at that age make it so difficult for us to bounce out of that way of thinking and way of being, and how it really starts to erode our soul.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know it's excuse me. In my personal experience, I used to drink alcohol, and I didn't consume a whole lot of sugar. I was, following a low carbohydrate diet, again, trying to lose weight forever. But when I decided to stop drinking alcohol, which I had recognized was becoming a bit of a problem, my sugar consumption skyrocketed. And I thought, well, first I didn't know what to make of it. And then I realized that I was using sugar in the same way that I used to use alcohol, and it was such a huge revelation. And that's when I sought help for what I was trying to, what I was trying, what I was thinking might be an addiction. But at the time, and this is a couple of years ago, I thought, but there's no such thing as a food addiction. How can you be addicted to food or sugar or anything like that? But I had a sneaking suspicion there was something definitely going off the rails. And with a bit of research, I found the help that I needed. But and I'm still a work in progress. It's not to say that 2 years later, I don't have those thoughts of, imbibing and testing the waters. But I know that if I go down that path and I have a taste of anything, it's going to set me back. And so I just avoid it and deal with the urges and the cravings. And, and what's brilliant about the work that we do is we teach people how to navigate life as a person who doesn't eat sugar and carbohydrates and processed foods. There are techniques and tools and methods that help you navigate. And it's not like a lot of people think, well, you must be white knuckling it all the time. You must be thinking about food. No, when you don't have the sugar, that stuff in your head gets very quiet, and life is a lot more peaceful in here. So yeah, staying away is best.
And I think that's, for me, is the key marker of the difference of living a life in recovery. And when you're actually face first, head planted in the food and in the addiction piece, and it's creating a life beyond addiction and believing it's possible. That's the difference, really. And it's such a gift. And I think, what do I want to say about this? I think that, no, it's completely gone, which is interesting. I'll bounce it back to you, Cheryl. It'll come back to me, I'm sure, in a minute.
I think what happens is, sometimes words fail us because it's such an emotional subject. And for ourselves, not only for our clients, but it's difficult to stay out of the emotional part of the story when you're dealing with addiction. And so, conveying thoughts and ideas can be a little bit challenging from time to time, because it's not something that's tangible. It's not something that I can say, I have a boo-boo here. We know what to do with that. But when boo-boo is in your head, it's more difficult to deal with.
I think so, and I think also when I look back, I can never quite remember. I I can never quite believe that I used to live like that, with every waking moment telescoped down to when I could get my next hit. I was never in the present moment. I was never present with my life. I was always on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next thing. So I would wake up in the morning thinking, where can I get something to eat? How can I stop off at somewhere to get something to eat before I get into work? At work, my bottom drawer would be full of stuff I could snack on during the day, and at lunchtime, what can I have at lunchtime? And it would just, my whole life and way of being was really telescoped into that existence. And looking back, I think, wow, how extraordinary is that? And coupled with that, and maybe this is why it's so difficult to talk about, I don't know, was this huge belief that there was something fundamentally wrong with me, that I was broken, that I was a failure, that I was not effective as a human being. I mean, really, it is almost as soul deep as that. And you carry it around as a burden. This disease is so alienating and isolating. You just everything is just retracted back into itself. And if it's not to do with getting food and getting your next hit, everything just feels flat and grey around there. Like feeling very depressed, very, very low mood. And I understand now that's to do with downregulation of dopamine and serotonin and other hormones that were working in my body. But at the time, nobody told me this. Nobody told me this. It was just what I had picked up from the diet clubs, that if I couldn't actually stick to the messages they were telling me, that it was my fault and there was something wrong with me, or I was a liar. Because their programs work. And that just reinforced the idea that there was something wrong with me. And I picking up on what you said, it is those memories, the sort of toxic shame that came from it, are painful to go back to. And that's why I know both you and I are absolutely committed to doing what we can to lifting people up out of the shame and the guilt and the isolation and the alienation, and believing that they're broken, because actually we are all perfect. We're born perfect. It's just choices we make around food. But when we gain that understanding of what's happening in the brain and what's happening on a neuroscience level around the addiction, it helps us to really understand the processes that are happening in our body, and actually empowers us to make sustainable change. And that's the difference.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So it's not it's a very doable thing, but it's not an easy journey. So having the help of someone who's trained in food addiction, having a professional work with you is so important. I mean, I don't think that I would have made the progress that I have made to date if I had not sought the help of, a coach, a counselor. It's been fantastic. I mean, like I said, it hasn't been easy. There have been many tests along the way, but I feel amazing. Like I think one of the best parts is the lack of brain fog, when you're eating properly, when you're feeding your body nutritional foods, it changes everything, not just how you look, but how you think. I mean, I would have never believed that. I would have never believed that. That fog that you don't even know it's there until it's gone. So that's why it's so hard to
I love that
describe.
description. And it will come back as well. If I dip back into the food, and if I dip back into eating that, and then suddenly stop again, you realize actually, no, it is there. And it's a very valid, visible thing. And my experience of that going through menopause was very much that was it. Life would be a downhill slide from that. And I would have that and experience that for the rest of my life. And it would manifest itself that I would be driving in the car and almost suddenly come to and have no idea how to drive, which was scary,
Scary. Yeah.
Or I couldn't quite remember where I was, or people's names. That's another one, isn't it? Losing that ability to do it, really deeply affected by this. But I would never, people hear the word addiction and think that you're broken and lonely and lying under a ditch, under the bridge in a ditch or whatever, and all the rest of it, abandoned by society. But actually, I think what it means is that I've abandoned myself.
Yeah.
For food.
Yeah. That's very true. That's very true. It's absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Yeah. I think we should do this again. I'm sorry, I cut you off there.
No, I was going to say, we came on to talk about the sugar use general assessment recording tool, which was created by Bitten, Jonsson and Borje, Dahl. And I'm just wondering whether we feel we've covered everything that we wanted to say about the tool, or is there anything more? I know people will come back to me and say, okay, why? I know I'm a sugar addict. Ha, 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 usually. I've got a sweet tooth. Ha, ha, ha. And that actually, I'm saying it like that because that was me. I used to make terrible jokes about myself and my
Right,
sweet.
chocoholic.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. Actually, it's not funny. And the more that we minimize that behavior, the more we kind of minimize our responsibility of taking control of the situation and making a difference. So it's very interesting. But my question I'm going to ask you is, what would you say to people who say, well, I'm a sugar addict, or why would I bother? Why would I bother going through one of your diagnostic assessments?
That's a really good question. I think if a person is struggling with their health and with their weight, and I mean, if I know this person, if we're having a conversation face to face, and and I can see the patterns, I would say to the person, let's just do the assessment and see what happens, because sometimes you do an assessment and you may think that person has an addiction when in fact they have harmful use. So, it's really important to know if you're dealing with someone who has bad habits versus someone who is addicted. So I think it's important to know exactly where you stand so that you know how to move forward.
Yes, so you're saying it's about the treatment protocol, because
Absolutely, because I think if you approach it the wrong way, you can just spin your wheels and the client is giving you their money, but they're not getting anywhere. And that's the last thing I want to do. I want to make an impact in someone's life. And I want to know if I'm dealing with someone who has just bad habits versus someone who is truly addicted.
Yeah, because the difference is, and this is why it's so important what you define, is that if you have bad habits, moderation is going to work for you. Talking therapy will work for you and get you through that blip, maybe where you're struggling with a weight loss problem. Going to diet clubs are going to work with you. Moderation is going to work with you. But if you're an addict, if you have the disease of addiction, moderation is never going to work.
No.
The recovery protocol for addiction is abstinence, and that's a big ask. Only ever one day at a time. But that's like you say, where we come in and our role comes in as recovery coaches is very much teaching you skills how to actually approach life one day at a time, and really wonderful techniques that we've both learned on our own personal journeys, but also that we've been trained to share through the work that we've done in qualifying with the holistic medicine for addiction. So we know key tools that are going to make a difference as you embark on your journey into recovery. And that just really re-emphasizing what you're saying and how we work as recovery coaches and our role around that. But the key thing is it harmful use? I know I shouldn't be eating this because it doesn't do me any good. But if I wanted to, I could stop, and moderation's going to work.
Right.
Or am I one of these people who can't stop thinking about food, who's done everything, and there are people as well, for example, who actually have limbs amputated, but still, because of their eating, taking them into type 2 diabetes, affecting their circulation, they lose a limb, but still can't stop eating, and will go on to lose a second limb because they cannot stop eating. It is that level of compulsion around food.
Exactly.
Have you tried to stop, and can you?
Right. Yeah. And the other thing too, a lot of people think that curing or getting over addiction is to be abstinent. Well, that's just a little tiny part of the work that needs to be done to get well, to get better, to be able to live life in a normal way, you
But
know?
talk to me about that a little. Tell me a little more about that.
Well, I think what happens is you you meet people who are, we'll call them normal or normies in our vernacular, who don't understand the level of crazy that we feel around food. We don't understand the level of crazy that we have around food. And so we think that, well, I'll just stop eating sugar for a while and I'll be fine. That's how you deal with an addiction. You just don't have it. But there's fallout from not having your drug of choice, in this case, your sugar and your carbohydrates. There's sometimes mental anguish, there's anxiety, there are physical things that can happen to you. There's so much that a person faces when they are removed from their drug of choice. We'll call sugar a drug because I feel that it is. And so they're not prepared. So it's not just about not having the substance. It's about doing the work that comes after and during. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know
and
if I answered your question. I just kind of went off.
no, well, I have a tendency to do that, but I didn't notice that in your answer with that. But what I wanted to say was that that's, the protocol that we are taught through the training that we've done with Bitten is very much 10% about the food, but it starts with food and it's all about the food till it's not about the food, and then it never was about the food. But
Right.
for me, it was the addiction knowledge, the addiction education piece, brain science, which really helped me 100% understand what was going on and what was driving my bus. What was going on. It wasn't what I thought it was.
Right.
And understanding what was going on in my two brains, the limbic system, the prefrontal cortex, just basic like neuroscience 101, but actually enough to make a profound difference in seeing what was
Right.
driving my behavior and how to get
Right.
ahead was my behavior and how to make a difference. And these are all, good, understandable, readily available cognitive behavioral therapy techniques that we build into the training and working with individuals. But of course, the other huge piece that goes along with that is the connection piece. So 50% of the recovery program is connecting. It's having dialogues with people who understand, like we're doing here, just
Right.
talking about it and understanding and really feeling our way into that. And that is huge, given that this disease is so much about shame. And if you still have shame, you haven't understood the disease of addiction. But that leads to alienation and isolation. Learning to see this as a disease, not that we are the disease, that we have a
Right.
disease, is huge.
Right. Right. And that's why I'm careful around the language too. I identify as a person with an addiction rather than being an addict. And because I think it kind of softens the message. So for me, that's the language that I prefer to use. I don't know why I just mentioned that, but it popped into my head, so I thought that I would mention it.
No,
But
but I think it's really important. It's really key because it gives you like a sort of a way in. It creates a distance between you and the disease. Like, other chronic diseases, which addiction is, would be something like chronic fatigue or cardiovascular disease, or
right,
I don't know, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. But you are not that. You're not that
right,
disease, are you?
right,
A person with cancer is not a cancer.
right. I am not cancer. I have cancer. Right.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
so you have a little edge, a little distance, which gives you the ability to make changes. It's not as overwhelming as to think about it in other terms.
that's right. That's right. So yeah, I just love doing what I do, and I know that you are just as devoted and dedicated to doing what you do. And it's great to wake up in the morning for two reasons. One, I'm not thinking about food, and two, I'm going to make a difference in someone's life today. you know, and I know that, you know, rocks your world as well as it does mine. So
Because I think, forgive me for speaking for you as well, but I think this is true that we both suffered for a
long time.
long time with this
Yep.
disease, and no understanding or awareness that this is a thing.
Yeah.
You
This
know,
is a
it's
thing.
real. And that sugar is a drug, and
Yeah.
that you know that it is possible to change. And what I know about both of us and about anybody who struggles with this disease is our wonderful, extraordinary resilience and perseverance. And I also choose to see what we have as a trait, a genetic tendency that would have been super welcome and super powerful in an ancestral tribe setting, where those who had our ability to find food at 100 paces, to know where that patch of berries is in the woods that we can find, that we need food, you know, get up and go, we need food now, would have been really sought after, hugely prized. You know, evolution doesn't give different traits to different people for no reason. It's purposeful. What's gone wrong in today's confused society is the availability of food. It's, you know, you don't even have to leave your home. You can pick up the phone and get food. It's everywhere. The queues and trees of food are everywhere. So, you know, there's so much hope in this
There
community.
is. Yeah, that's the best part. That's the best part, is that there is hope. You can do this. It's not easy, but it's done all the time. And if
We're doing it.
seriously, if I can do it, anybody can do it.
But it is, and if that's one message that I would really like to leave, and I'm sure you would too, with people who are listening, it's just there's so much hope here.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible. One day at a time, one step at a time, just do the next right thing. And
That's
if
right.
either of us can help you in any way, please do get in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm in Canada and you're in the UK. So we're 6 hours apart. I think it's a 6 hour time difference. So I'm in Eastern time zone. I think yes, I am.
And
And
I'm in British summertime, also known as London time. I read somewhere, or Greenwich Mean
okay,
Time, but it's definitely British summertime. So
okay.
so we're on that. So yeah, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours time difference. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm based up in Leeds in West Yorkshire
Right.
with that. But I know both of us are available globally via Zoom.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I'm also going
Yeah,
to
we're
offer in-person class as well in my local town. Something new
okay. Nice.
as
Yeah,
well.
so I work virtual, well, Zoom. I work through Zoom calls. Now I don't do in person. I'm just not set up for that. But yeah, we get a lot done via Zoom, huh? It's amazing. The technology. You can reach, I mean, like you, globally around the world. I've
Yeah.
had clients from Australia, from the UK, lots from the US. That seems to be predominantly where my clients come from.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes, globalization.
that's us. So, well, I think I would love to do this again with you. I mean, you're such a joy to chat with. And how do you feel about that, doing this again?
I think we should, you know, when I was growing up, there used to be a thing on television. I don't know, these group of women would sit round a table and chat about things. I can't remember. I just remember that people come in, ring a doorbell, and they'd come in. It was a UK program, and the women would sit around a table and chat about a subject. And you know, I was there 8 or 9 years old watching this thing, and I don't know, doing the, I don't know what I'm saying, we're old women, I don't mean that, but it just reminds me of that, having a dialogue, you know, about a subject that is so precious and so dear to our heart, and how we learn to have a life, you know, when we thought it had all gone. It's powerful.
Yeah. So I just one more question before we wrap it up. Do you work predominantly with women or do you work with men as well?
I've worked with both, so I
Yeah.
don't have a real preference with that. You know, I'm open to both. I probably have more women though, and more women actually my age, so kind of gone through menopause.
Right.
I did do a really fabulous training with a Jungian psychologist called Sharon Blackie about reimagining the second half of life. So being able to bring all of that training into what I'm doing as well around that, it's really invigorating, working with women my age who are looking to reimagine the second half of life. You know, we have so many years left ahead of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I enjoy working with men and women, and anyone I can help. Anyone. I don't work with children, but anyone over 18. But most of my clients are over 30, and yeah. So,
Yeah. Good
all
stuff.
right, my dear. So we'll wrap it up for this time around, and then we'll make plans to meet again, and we'll record our casual conversation around the table and get to know each other and get chatting about what fascinates us about the food addiction things.
Wonderful. And I'm just looking and I love the way our bookcases match. So it looks like we're, yeah, the shelves
Didn't even
follow along
notice.
from each other. I think it's really clever.
Oh dear.
Cut
Okay,
this
well,
out. Frank can cut this out if he wants and all the rest of it. But why don't you pick a card and tell me
okay.
what the card
Well,
today?
let me turn off the recording